A few months ago, I made a video about how far I've gone in my car without even getting into a fender bender. I'm driving a Mitsubishi Lancer, which I bought over 3 years ago now, and I like to measure how far I've gone without an accident by equivalent of how many circles around the earth. And every time I make it one more circle around the earth, I like to celebrate. And I made a video about how I completed my 3rd lap this past year. I'm on my 4th lap, and kind of interesting because in Chinese the number 4 is kind of unlucky, and I've had a few close calls on this 4th lap, including earlier today. So I'm in Ellensburg right now, actually, and on the way here I got into a very scary situation, and fortunately I made it out, and it made me realize that there's a feature in our car that could potentially be very useful. So, like most modern cars, I have a cruise control system, and here's some buttons to adjust the radio, actually, and this is a way to connect your phone to the car, which is also very useful. But this is a cruise control, and you can see I've used it quite a bit because the buttons are very worn out. So this button is to turn on the system altogether, and you're going down the highway and you turn it on to start going. You get up to 50 or 60 miles an hour, and you press the on button to start the cruise control, and then you can increase or decrease the speed by, I think it's a mile an hour each time you press the button. It's very helpful for me because I actually have a tendency to drive very slowly sometimes, especially on the freeway where I don't have to interact with a lot of people. And I tend to drive slowly because I know this is a bad habit of mine, but I tend to daydream a lot when I'm driving. So right now I'm teaching at Washington Technology University. I have a tendency to daydream about the lectures of tomorrow, daydream about how I'm going to negotiate with my dean. I am a very bad negotiator of anything, not just at my workplace, but even of where we're going to go for dinner on a date, or even just everyday situations like negotiating. I was recently at a laundromat, and there's this long line. I really don't like waiting inside the laundromat because the fumes make me ill. And I just said, can you watch the machine right after? I looked at the time on the machine. There was 22 minutes left. I looked at my clock. I said, I'll be back in 22 minutes. Can you just make sure nobody takes the machine? After he should, and the guy using the laundry machine didn't seem to quite understand me. I just have a hard time negotiating, and so I like to daydream about how I'm going to do it next, and I have a tendency to do that when I drive. I have a tendency to negotiate. Give me a second, my battery is actually dying. So I was just saying that because I suck so badly at negotiating, I have a tendency to daydream about how to do it next. And actually recently I had a funny experience about daydreaming about negotiating. I was in the middle of a meeting at my workplace at WTU, and I was sitting at a desk, and I wasn't really paying attention to the meeting. I was thinking about a Craigslist gig that I was going to do later that night. This guy had needed help moving some things, and he had a large number of a large amount of furniture to move, and I probably had to make a few trips to do it. And I was thinking about how to haggle the price a little bit, and I was jotting down words I would use for the price, and then I realized I'm spending 2 or 3 hours of stress, you know, at my work, and affecting the performance of my work at WTU. I'm spending 2 or 3 hours of stress just to haggle an extra 10-20 bucks, and I got so frustrated at myself doing that I was writing on a piece of paper during the meeting. I wrote across the piece of paper, "Stop!" to tell myself to stop daydreaming about this stuff, and then I tried to pay attention to the rest of the meeting, so that was good. But the cruise control definitely helps me to avoid doing that. But I ran into a little pitfall with cruise control earlier today on the highway. What had happened was I got up to 55 miles an hour. I was on I-90. The speed limit is 60, and I turned on the cruise control, and all was good. And I started thinking about WTU again, and I started thinking about one day going back to Gdansk, Poland. I haven't had a trip like that for some time, and I started thinking about Taipei. I have a conference in Taipei, but I really want to go back to Europe. Unfortunately, there isn't much going on there. The conferences are not there anymore. And so I started thinking about going to the moon someday, and my mind was just all over the place. And then all of a sudden, there was construction up ahead, and I needed to slow down. So my cruise control was on. I just needed to put my foot on the brake, and then I realized that the whole time my cruise control was on, my legs, I didn't have good posture for my legs, and they were completely useless. And finally, I brought my leg over to the brake pedal somehow, and I pushed it, and when I did that, my whole leg felt like there was a metal rod running through. It was like, oh, it was like burning pain. And I pulled over to the shoulder, and I took a 15-minute break. Everything's good now, but it made me realize how bad a situation that could have turned out. It made me realize, why don't our cruise control systems have like a finger activated brake pedal over here? That would be really nice, because I never thought about that. I always took for granted that cruise control could be turned off at a moment's notice. I never realized that I could. What had happened was I actually put my legs like this while I had the cruise control on. And anyways, there's another lesson to be learned in this saga, if you will. It's a Saturday that I'm recording this. Part of the reason I headed out for Ellensburg was something upsetting that happened yesterday. At WTU, my dean and I were talking about a paper that she wanted me to submit to a conference in Taipei, because we're shooting for an accreditations process, and which is good. I'm paying for the conference out of my own pocket, unfortunately, and because of that, in part because of, not in whole, but in part because of that, I'm actually living in a situation. I'm sharing a room with somebody where I really shouldn't be, and you know, I can't get caught doing that. And so I've been spending a lot of time at the campus to cook my food and to eat there. And somebody complained that the food odor was just terrible, and so I can't cook there. But it makes me realize that you know, my dean only likes the paper. She doesn't like the fact that because of all the costs involved, that I end up having to cook on the campus, and it got me very worked up when, you know, and I got into my car and I just wanted to get out of the Seattle area, and that's how I ran into this my leg burning earlier today, and almost risking my life, if you will. But I really like coming to Ellensburg because it helps to separate what's going on in Seattle. I always leave that behind. If it weren't telling the story, I wouldn't even remember what happened yesterday. I kind of already forgot most of it. But whatever the case is, perhaps the trip was a little bit more rushed than it had to be, and that's typically what happens when I don't make good planning for any sort of activity, whether it be a trip, whether it be a date, whether it be anything else. So anyways, thought I'd bring up that car safety feature and bring up the idea that you should probably watch the posture of your legs if you have your cruise control on. Thanks for watching.